In late June, 70 researchers and farmers took part in a WA Livestock Research Council by invitation study tour to the UWA Research Farm in West Pingelly. On site, they were treated to a broad range of presentations that provided an insight into the extent of projects underway and the degree of collaboration between WA's livestock research community. This next MLA project, funded directly from WALRC Priorities, is presented by Carolyn Jacobson from Murdoch University. She talks about managing merino weaners to survive and thrive.
Murdoch University has been coordinating a project for Meat and Livestock Australia, which I see lots of legends in this crowd which were all part of that project, which was really focused on maiden ewe performance. And in that study, it was a broader study conducted across Australia. We had two aspects. We looked at maiden ewe performance and again across industry where we could get the sort of solid data from people who'd been scanning and marking maidens and adults on the same farm. We found that for our non-merino ewe lambs that the marking rates were on average 58% different, so 58% lower than the adults on the same farm. And for our maiden merino hoggets, so they're the merinos lambing for the first time at 2 years old, it was about a 22% difference. Now that was because of both lower reproductive rate, so scanning rate, and also lower lamb survival. Okay, so there was two aspects that we really need to concentrate on to improve maiden ewe performance. And again, as part of that project, we looked really closely at the survival of lambs between scanning and lambing on 30 farms across southern Australia, including 12, I think that was in Western Australia. And we found that in the ewe lambs that about 1 in 3 flocks have lamb losses greater than 5% occurring between scanning and lambing, so basically abortion. And so that's something that we really need to be focusing on in terms of understanding what are the causes of that. When is that a problem? Like what is different about those 1 in 3? We think there might be some infectious causes which we're better trying to understand, and how does that also impact the survival of those lambs? In the merino hoggets, we found less common abortion problems, certainly sporadic cases now coming through the department labs, and again that's something we're definitely looking into. But for merino hoggets, for survival, the focus really is on that perinatal period, that period around birth and that first 3 days, much the same we see with the adult sheep. Now interestingly, we thought that when we looked at the merinos, that we thought that the farms that are doing better in the adults would be doing better in the maidens. And yes, there is a relationship, but basically the performance of the adults only explains about 40% of the performance in the maiden ewes. So what that says to us is that just doing more of the same isn't necessarily going to improve our maidens in every case. And what we're really interested in is what can we do between effectively that post-weaning period, so between weaning and joining, to improve the reproductive performance of the maidens, so getting them in lamb, improving their reproductive rate, their scanning rate, and then keeping those lambs alive. Now there's also good evidence through these bigger data sets that getting reproduction right in the maiden joining, so ewes that are more likely to get in lamb, raise those lambs, that actually has a carryover effect into their second and subsequent lambing. So getting nutrition right in that period. We have surprisingly little information about when, if we're going to put extra weight onto ewes, when the best time to do that is. Is it early? Is it late? Or does it not matter at all? And of course that makes a big difference to the economics, because if you can do that on green feed where you're not having to have extra supplementary feeding, obviously that's a big difference. So part of the project that we're going to be running across Western Australia, Victoria and New South Wales, the project is going to be focused on merino weaners and managing them between weaning and joining to improve their lifetime performance. So we're focusing not just on survival, but basically their reproductive performance in their first and second lambing. How we're doing that is we're looking at different nutritional profiles after weaning. So basically an early growth group, a late growth group, and then a normal, and then comparing, what is the benefit of that extra weight? When do we put it on? And is it economical? We're basically running that. We've got 2 sites already up and running with last year's drops lambs. So you've obviously seen the MLP ewes here. We've got another site in the Great Southern. We've got 2 flocks starting this year. So those lambs are dropping or about to drop. So we're quite excited about seeing that coming to fruition. We'll have 2 sites in New South Wales starting this year. And that's going to really inform our preliminary recommendations. Importantly, this project has a big focus on adoption. And so what we're going to be looking for is having demonstration sites scattered strategically around Western Australia, where we can trial out our recommendations across different genotypes and across different environments, and give farmers in different areas opportunities to see how our recommendations are working locally. So hopefully, if you're not already involved in the project, we're going to be tapping you on the shoulder and seeing if you or a local site in your area would be interested, probably year after next, starting to roll out some of these post-weaning recommendations. Okay. I guess my only other comment is, I guess one of the great things about working with the team that I'm in is that this project has a strong genetics and management overlay. So it's not a genetics project, it's not a management project, it's absolutely an integrated whole system project with a focus on mixed farming systems. So again, one of the other things that we're really looking for in these demonstration sites is that we've got places where we can absolutely integrate our management recommendations, making sure that it's profitable, making sure that it's robust, and making sure that it's really blending in with a mixed farming system with the genotypes that we've got. Okay.
Once you get the weight on them early, if we put the early weight ones, is the idea you then maintain that extra weight vis-a-vis the rest, or just, you get them up to, say, score 3.5 or something, you're supposed to hold them there?
That's a really good question, and it's something that we've battled with. So the sheep here, they were slow. We were slow pulling them apart, but they've maintained that difference basically to their last weight. We had another site in the Great Southern where they pulled apart early, but once those sheep got on green feed, even with extra supplementary feeding, it was hard to pull them apart. We've spoken again to I think what we'll be doing is we'll be analysing at each time point. And the beauty of this project is it's probably more detail than anyone cares about. But in the analysis happens at the level of the individual ewe, so we can account for that, because there's going to be some ewes which are going to bounce back and some ewes that don't. The goal is to keep them apart, but we're young and people are pretty confident that even where they creep back together, that there's still really useful outcomes. And again, there's some evidence that ewes that grow faster earlier hit maturity earlier. And so that's why we're really interested in that early growth, wondering if this is one of the factors driving the difference in scanning rates, just because it's affecting effectively their ovulation even as an 18-month-old.
Are you, with your joining, are you splitting it at all and doing ewe lambs versus maidens, or is it all their first joining will be maiden age?
These are all hogget age joining, and that was really the scope of the project. I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with ewe lambs, and particularly around that growth. I think we've got good evidence with ewe lambs about their growth from joining to lambing, not so much in that immediate pre-period. So it's that growth path effectively to joining that we're interested in.